Hello and welcome to the War Story Podcast. I'm your host, Garen Jones, and I need to bring you guys up to speed on what's going on. Because we weren't the War Story Podcast for a long time. We were Veteran State of Mind for, I think, maybe 5 years, something like that. Feels like about 5 years. As you guys will know, if you've been listening for a while, I've kind of been going back and forth on the format that I want the podcast to take for a while. You know, we started off as being a bit of a laugh, really. I know you guys love the rants and bants. I love doing them too. Rants and bants won't be coming back. Reason being that me and Joe have just kind of got too much going on to spend the time, you know, poring over politics and everything like that. You know, it's one of those with the rants and bants where, you know, we had a good laugh doing it, but we also put a lot of time into what we were talking about, and you know, priorities have shifted. We just got too much going on there. So yeah, there will be no more rants and bants. It's one of those things. It was great fun while it lasted, and so was Veteran State of Mind. But it's time for a change, and I'll kind of explain my reasons why. And it's also the reason why I haven't been around much. Sounds like I'm going back home after going out for the milk, doesn't it? 20 years ago. But basically, you know, I've been really lucky the last, I don't even know now, the last probably year or so, just over a year, about the last 14 months, I've been able to work on a couple of books for the Imperial War Museum. And these books have been focused on people's personal accounts. The first one was D-Day, and I've just finished this one about the Battle of Germany, which covers the British Army in 3 months in Germany. And it's kind of made me quite sad, to be honest, because, well, I mean, one, because of the content of the stories, but also because, you know, I'm coming to some of these battles and actions that happened in Germany towards the end of the war, and there's just very little on there. And obviously, you know, those recordings weren't made while those people are alive. They're gone forever now. And I don't want that to happen again. So that has really kind of changed, you know, my focus. And I want to get as many of our generations and the generations that are still around. I want to get as many of those stories down as I can. Obviously, I'm far from the only person doing this. We're actually going to have, our next guest is going to be somebody who's doing an amazing job at this. You'll probably know who he is when he comes on, but it's just one of those things where I just think we've got to take this opportunity while I can, because the other thing as well, you know, and I'm not slagging anyone off here, you know, there was reasons why people didn't give these interviews and stuff, and you know, that's a story for another day. But you know, a lot of the interviews were given when people were in their 70s, their 80s, even their 90s. You know, and there's some things that people will never forget. You know, I do believe that. But then, you know, that's the life, isn't it? We can only remember so much. And I'm sure if you've been on operations, there's probably a lot of it that's blurred together. Some of it you might have even forgotten. We're still reasonably youngish, those of us who served in Afghanistan and Iraq. Guys who are fighting in Ukraine and places now are even younger. And, well, some of them. And then, you know, obviously we've still got the kind of going back to the career generation is kind of as, you know, as that's how far back I want to get. I want to get these stories down while we can. So with that in mind, going forward, this is just going to be the War Stories podcast. It's going to do exactly what it says on the tin. We're going to have war stories. There'll be two formats. There'll be War Story, which is when we'll have someone that served in war or was directly affected in war, because, you know, if you're a civilian in caught in the middle of a war zone, you know, those stories need recording too. And I really believe that. And the other kind of little part of it is now and again, they won't be as common, but we'll have a war story history, because it really helps to obviously have some context around these stories that you're hearing as well. So we might have a historian coming on that specializes about a certain aspect of the war, those kind of things. And that'll help fill in as well, because like I said, you know, unfortunately, a lot of people have gone from certain conflicts. It can be hard to find guests, even if people from that generation are still around. You know, and the stories of a British soldier who fought at Waterloo are just as important as the stories of somebody who fought a couple of years ago. So when we can, we'll get experts on to talk about those, using the sources, primary sources, wherever we can. So if there's somebody that specializes, who's collected the stories of people from those times, then we'll get them on. But yeah, war stories going to be the focus here. I'm not giving up on telling the stories of people who have got out of the military and done great things, in business, sports, whatever it might be. That's going to come in a separate podcast, though. Be looking at launching that later in the summer, so stand by on that one. Too early to really give a lot of detail on that now, but rest assured, if you enjoyed those kind of podcasts, they will be coming back as well. But for the meantime, the meat and potatoes is going to be war stories. So let me just check my notes. I'm absolutely shattered, guys. I've been loving working on these books, and it's nice to come out of the bunker and be able to start getting working on the podcast and stuff now. So thanks for bearing with us. With that in mind, there's no adverts on the podcast. There's not going to be adverts on the podcast unless someone comes along and offers me a Joe Rogan deal, in which case I'm sure you'll understand why I have to accept it. But there's no podcasts. I pay for it out of my own pocket, and the reason being, like I've just been saying, because I believe it's important. So quite happy to pay for it out of my own pocket. All I ask is, if you agree that the stories are important and you agree that they should be heard and heard by as many people as possible, then every episode that you enjoy, every episode that you listen to, please share it. So let's just make this our kind of little contract right now. I'll make them, I'll pay for them, you share them. And if you could leave reviews on iTunes or give it a 5-star on Spotify, wherever you're listening, that helps a lot as well. Me get these podcasts out to as many people as possible. Also, we're going to start doing videos as well. I didn't do one for this, and it's not because I look like an absolute creature after being in my bunker for several months, even though I do. We will start getting the videos going. It just involves more editing and everything like that, and I didn't want to put this off any longer. So I'm going to get the audio ones out probably for the next couple of months, and then again towards the beginning of the summer, we're going to start getting the bloody videos out there, and all that kind of thing. All right, that is enough of a spiel from me. Let's get into today's guest. So I've taken this comes from the back of his book. So I'm sure you're going to really enjoy this guest story. He's a lovely lad as well. I had a really good time. The time absolutely flew. Good news is, as well, as his audio book is available on Audible and those kind of places. So if you enjoy the conversation, then the great news is you can stop listening to me and keep listening to him for probably 7 or 8 more hours. His name is Andrew Williams. He enlisted in the Parachute Regiment at 16 years old. He's deployed to Helmand 2006 with 3 para, confronted the brutal realities of war, engaging in some of the most intense combat witnessed by the British Army since the Korean War. After his military service, Andrew transitioned into domestic counterintelligence and spent over a decade as a high-risk security consultant, navigating some of the world's most dangerous and unpredictable environments. These harrowing experiences forced him to face not only the physical dangers around him, but also the deep, often unseen psychological scars left by war. Yeah, apologies for me struggling to read today, guys, but the good news is this is the end of me reading off a piece of paper. Now we can get into an actual conversation. So please give a warm welcome to Mr. Andrew Williams. Andy, welcome to the podcast, mate. Thanks for making the trip. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to come down and talk to you.
So I'm going to have a little water because I think that breakfast is starting. Let's just dive straight into your background, mate. From North Wales, from down the road, but quite a different kind of upbringing to a lot of people. So can you just give us an idea about what your childhood was like?
Yeah, sure. So as I said, not too far from here, very proudly North Welsh, North Walian. So yeah, I grew up on the North Wales coast, but it was I suppose it was a bit unconventional upbringing, really. So I'm the youngest of 3 siblings, and my eldest brother, my brother he joined the Marines at 17, so I never really lived with him. He's 15 years older than me, something like that. When I was 3, my mother decided to abandon my sister and I. So at the time, my father worked in Saudi Arabia. So he was a petrochemical engineer, and from what I understand now, my mother didn't want to go over there and live, and so we would just see him once or twice a year. But yeah, at the age of 3, she left. So I didn't see her again for probably about 9 or 10 years. She came back into where we were living, but I never had anything to do with her. Unfortunately, she was an alcoholic and could be quite violent with that as well, which was mostly directed at my sister. And so when she left, we decided that my sister was only 15 at the time. In fact, she was 14 when she left. So we went to live in Saudi Arabia. And like I said, I was only like 3, so not started full-time education yet. And we lived over there for a couple of years, full-time. And then when my sister got to like 16, she just missed being back home. She missed her friends. She missed our way of life over here. And so she said to my dad that she wanted to come back and she would become my full-time mother. And she would raise me as her own from the age of 16. So that's what we did. We came back, and my dad's mum had what was a council flat, a former council flat in Prestatyn, and we lived there, just my sister and I, and she became my full-time mother there. It was difficult, but she did a really good job for someone of that age. And then what would happen is every summer holidays, I would generally miss the last week of school and the first week back, and I'd spend a couple of months in Saudi Arabia, which as a young lad was an experience in itself. You know, it was just like one big adventure, and Saudi at that time in the late 80s wasn't what it was now. You know, you had the Khobar tower bombings in 1996 by Iranian-backed Hezbollah. So there was a lot of terrorism. They wasn't very welcoming to the West at that time, but I didn't really know that as a young lad. I would just sort of take everything in my stride, and I was very, very grateful for that experience, actually. It gave me a different perspective of the world outside of North Wales. And so, yeah, we went back and I went to school, started school back home in North Wales.
So when was this seed kind of planted? You mentioned your brother joining up. Where was this kind of come from in the family? Did you have older family members that were in the military, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so my father was in the Merchant Navy when he was in his 20s, 30s. So my father they were all coal miners from a small village in North Wales called Fynningroew, and his first language was Welsh, and there wasn't a lot of opportunity for him growing up outside of working down the pit. And so, he studied and became an engineer, and that's how he ended up working abroad. And so the only real male role model figure I had growing up was my older brother. And as I say, he'd already joined the Marines at that point. So I had memories of him coming home on leave for a weekend, and I'd ask him about stories of the Marines and what he was up to. And I think that probably sown the seed initially this is my opportunity to do something and get out of North Wales and see the world. And that was what I was convinced that I was going to do from a young age, probably from the age of about 8 or 9. That I knew that's what I wanted to do.
All right, so let's just take this philosophical for a moment then. Let's put our big brains on. And do you think then that it's like the nature-nurture question, right? Do you think that there's something within you that gets woken up when you get that exposure? And Or do you think that that's something that's in some people than it isn't some people to kind of want? Because when you think about going to war and everything, it's not a very sane decision, but it seems to be not a lot of people talk about wanting to do it, but when you actually look at the numbers, it's only a small number of people who actually kind of really try and make it happen. So do you think that was a case of awakening something within you, or do you think it was implanted in you?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, actually. I know, getting really, really deep, I know that when I was young, I always had an overwhelming feeling like I wasn't wanted, like I was in the way, and I could never understand why I didn't have a mum and a dad like everybody else at school, and I couldn't. My young mind couldn't grasp why that my mum would just leave me, and she didn't want anything to do with me. So I know that from a young age, if I set my mind on doing something, I always wanted to do it to the best of my ability to prove my self-worth almost. And I applied that to everything. And then, so there was partly that of wanting to make something of myself, something that I felt like I could be proud of. And then there was also that there wasn't, as I saw it at that time, a great deal of opportunity in the town that I was growing up, and I saw my sister got married very young, and the home that we lived in was plagued by domestic violence, really, and often that was directed at me. So I think that only fueled my my desire to sort of get out and make something of myself. And I think, like a lot of people my age, I was fascinated with books and magazines and reading stories of conflicts of the past, from the Falklands to the Malayan jungle. And I there was, I don't know if you remember this, but there used to be a magazine collection called Combat and Survival, and every edition there would be, I think it started it must have been the mid-80s, and there would be some aspect of soldiering or tactics in the magazine, and then there would be an article about pieces of equipment, and then it'd always finish with 2 or 3 pages of a short story of soldiers somewhere, whatever, and I think that really inspired me.
Who was it that put you towards reading? Because it's something that obviously we don't really have access to Waterstones when we're young kids or anything like that. It has to usually come from someone else that puts you on that kind of track. By the way, Waterstone's not sponsored this podcast. Other bookstores are available. So who was it that kind of put you down that path towards reading as a tool to learn, tool to grow?
Yeah, my father read a lot when he was in Saudi Arabia, and we always had books knocking around at home. I wouldn't say we're avid readers, but I do remember looking through all the old books and reading what is war stories, and I suppose it just gave me a snippet into a life outside of what I knew, which was North Wales, and the travelling as well to Saudi Arabia. So I definitely, even now, I have that in me, that sense of wanting to travel and see lots of weird and wonderful places. And then there was my brother as well, and then I got to an age where I started to learn more about the military, and I actually wrote him a letter because I couldn't face telling him, because I thought he was going to be so disappointed I didn't want to be in the Royal Marines. And I said that I wanted to join the Parachute Regiment, and these are my reasons. I wanted to do something different, and I didn't want to sort of follow in his footsteps. I wanted to do my own thing, and a lot of that came from joining the Army Cadets. As I said, I always wanted to, what I viewed was the toughest and the best, if you like, in my immature mind, and I wanted to do it as early as possible, and that was 16 for me. I went to the careers office straight after school, and they did try and steer me in the direction of the Army Foundation College, because you can join there at 15 and however many months, but I didn't want to commit a year to go into the college and then moving on to phase 2. So I just waited until 16 and 9 months, and then off up to Catterick. But
so just before we get to Catterick, mate, you mentioned the cadets. Was that sense of like that kind of sense of not belonging and things? Did that drive you then towards organisations, team sports, that kind of thing?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Because I always played rugby growing up, and the Army Cadets, it gave you that sense of purpose, that sense of belonging. I also boxed a lot as a kid, and I saw a father figure in my boxing coach as well. So definitely, I think that would steer somebody in the direction of finding that they belong somewhere. But I lived on my own from quite a young age, because my sister remarried and sort of semi-moved out of the flat. And from the age of probably 14, 15, I was pretty much living on my own at that point. So she would put food in the cupboards and collect clothes and things from the flat, but I was largely left to my own devices. So I didn't hardly ever went to school. And a friend of mine...
What was the reason for that?
I think I was so adamant on joining the military, I would bunk off school and go and train. So there was a couple of extravagant physical training sessions that a few of my friends and I would do. There's quite a lot of us joined the military. 2 of us joined the Paras, 3 lads joined the Royal Marines, and a couple of lads joined the Royal Welsh.
And is this from school or from the boxing clubs?
Yeah, all from school.
Oh,
all from school, actually.
That's a lot, isn't it?
But rather than skip school and go and smoke weed down wherever, we would go and train, and we would come up with these training sessions where we were running in the sea, and we'd be in and out of the sea doing burpees. And there was one where we ran from Prestatyn all the way to Llandudno, which is like nearly 30 miles on the coast, just trying to sort of get as fit as possible. But
and sorry to interrupt, mate, are those lads all from your same school year and everything?
Yes, yeah. Well,
and how big would your school year be?
I mean, it's a big school. 3 of the lads were from my school year. One of the other lads went to another school, a Welsh-speaking school. But I don't think there's not a lack of opportunity. But if you're not academically inclined, which I felt like I wasn't, I enjoyed the physical aspects of school. I suppose it just gave you that chance to travel and see the world, and it seemed like a good career at the time. My wife jokes now that every time I go home, everyone that I went to school with are either in the NHS or they've joined the military in some way, shape or form. So when I did actually go to depot, I felt like I was prepared as I could be for a 16-year-old, because I was fitter than I've ever been in my life, but I could already cook for myself, iron my clothes, bull my boots, maintain a house. So it didn't really, I didn't miss home at all. I was sort of keen and raring to go.
And what particular, obviously not wanting to follow in your brother's footsteps, ruled out the commandos, Royal Marines, but what about like other? Why was it? There's a lot of jobs in the army. There's the other services. Why was it jump out of plane, shoot people? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I suppose the biggest influence probably came from the books and magazines that I had,
right.
and the maroon beret, for one, it stands out as something different. You don't have to be the smartest in the world. I could, like I say, I didn't really engage at school, but it was probably from the magazines and the books that I just happened to have, that I was reading, because by no means was an expert in all the different areas I could go into the military. So it's probably just what was available to me.
And when you looked at joining, was it more, I want a job and I want something to belong, or I want the experience of going to war? Which was the more kind of important to you?
I'd probably say the latter. In my naive mind. I saw it as a long-term career, but I think just from reading the war stories of the regiment's history, that was something that I wanted to be a part of.
So it's fair to say, if you did a career, let's say you did your 22 years and you didn't ever deploy and get rounds down and everything, you'd have been disappointed.
In my 16-year-old mind.
What about your 4-year-old mind, mate?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I definitely wouldn't change it, but at the same time, if my son, who's now 18, wanted to go in the military, I would probably try and persuade him to get a trade, or go into the Navy or the RAF, something where you could have a full career, and which I know is very contradictory of me.
Yeah.
But
you're not the first dad to say that, mate.
Yeah, but it's a different time that we live in now to when we joined the military.
Yeah. So what was your, you don't have to talk us through everything that goes on at depot or anything, but is there any particular moments that kind of stand out for you when you you join the paras and you're in training, and maybe anything from P Company or anything like that, like a particular memory that sticks out?
Yeah, learning to admin myself in the field was quite challenging at a young age. I remember feeling like a boy in a man's world, even though, thinking back now, those lads are only early mid-20s anyway. But when you're young, that's fully grown up for me. But yeah, I felt like I took it in my stride because I was so fit. I managed to stay injury free, and it's a long time. But I didn't really go back home when you get to the point in your training where you can go home on weekends and stuff. I would prefer to opt to either stay on the camp and be a block rat, or go to one of the other lads' hometowns and experience the nightlife or whatever it was there. But it was certainly tough. But I didn't feel homesick in any sense or anything like that. The most challenging part was probably the final exercise for me. So this is after P Company. So, P Company is, as long as if you can stay injury free and you're where your fitness should be, and you have some kind of mental robustness and grit or stubbornness not to give up, the chances are you're going to be successful. But after P Company, there is then the final exercise, which I'm not sure what it is now. It used to be in Northumberland on the border of it used to be on the border of Scotland, and it was a digging in defensive exercise for a week. And at that time when I did it, it was in January, and the weather was horrendous. It didn't stop either sleeting or snowing, and it was tough going, and the added factor of sleep deprivation. So that I found that really, really challenging.
Did you and your brother have, once you kind of gone through the paras and stuff, well, did he kind of remain in the service at the same time as you, and did you have a bit of a kind of like rivalry going on? Did you have a bit of worry for your brother after 9/11? Like what was that kind of the effect that his service was having on you and your service? Yeah,
so strangely, he deployed on the first Gulf. So, but he just stayed on a ship essentially, didn't really get involved. And other than that, he was posted down to Deal, and the Marines had some of the barracks down there. So he didn't really operationally, not even Northern Ireland, he didn't do a great deal, and that was through no fault of his own. It was just, the way of the world at that time. Obviously, for me, the moment the planes went into the Twin Towers, I had an idea that was going to influence or shape the career that I was going to have. So yeah, he left. He left before I joined. Before I joined, and yeah, we got some light-hearted banter about it now. Just like with the lads that joined at the same time as me that were in the Marines. Strangely enough, when we left Afghanistan at the end of 2006, we handed over to 40 Commando, and two of my best friends from school were on that first deployment for them, which was a completely bizarre feeling of, you grew up, went to school together, and then the next minute you'd seen each other at Camp Bastion, and we're coming on the back end of what was a pretty horrendous 6 months, and they're just starting theirs. That was quite a surreal experience.
So of that group of yours that was kind of training together and starting, did you all get into whatever you wanted to get into?
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe you should start selling this program.
Yeah. Yeah. It's bizarre when I think back, because it's quite a large proportion of our sort of friend group that joined the military, but none of us did long careers. We all sort of did a similar amount of time and then moved on.
All right, mate. So the day you got your beret, your maroon beret, talk us through that, what it meant to you.
Mate, I think obviously you're so young, but you are completely obsessed with it. When I think back, it's almost, it is brainwashing, because you're taking a group of young men who want more than anything to pass out, and a lot of that group, a lot of the platoon have come from broken homes where they're desperately searching for that sense of belonging, and that they want to do something meaningful with their lives. And then just how difficult it is to achieve that. I wanted it more than anything. I was, completely army barmy at that time. So, it meant everything to me. I didn't really think beyond passing out. And it was a really special day. My father had retired at that time, and he lived in Cyprus, so he flew over for it. My sister who brought me up, she came, and my best friend who ended up joining the Royal Marines, he was waiting to go into the Royal Marines. He came up to Catterick as well and watched me pass out. And then you were then told which battalion that you'd get posted to. So yeah, without a shadow of doubt, one of the most memorable and best days, of my life.
What was your kind of experiences like in battalion before your first operation?
It was an interesting time to join. So like I said, the plane's gone into the Twin Towers, so the whole dynamic of battalion life had changed. So
sorry, mate, I should have asked, when was it that you actually passed out?
2002.
Okay.
So yeah, very soon after. And the battalion, when I got there, were gearing up to go to Iraq for the invasion. The problem that I had was that I was 17 when I got to battalion, so I obviously couldn't deploy. So what they were doing, we formed part of a rear guard, a rear party, and there was a bunch of us that we couldn't deploy for whatever reason. Most of it was due to age. There were guys there with injuries, or they had court cases pending, or whatever that might be. And then as the guys turned 18, they would literally be sent out to theatre within a couple of days. So it was gut-wrenching for me, because you just joined battalion. This was the first sort of major conflict that the British Army had been involved in on that scale for a long time, and through no fault of my own, I was held back, and unfortunately, the battalion came back before I turned 18. So I that first during the invasion, I missed out on that.
Any idea what the reason is behind that? Because obviously it's not that you're not a trained soldier, right? You've done the same training as everyone else. I've never actually thought about it. Did you have any idea what the reason is behind the 18th, the 18 thing?
No, in all honesty, mate, I'm not entirely sure, but it's such a bizarre concept because you can use a live weapon. You've gone through the same selection process as everybody else, but
if anyone's listening and has the answer to this, please send it in, because I've never kind of understood that one. If you're trained.
Yeah. So it was gut wrenching, and then had the issue of the battalion came back. And although it was probably somewhat of an anticlimax for the battalion, that there wasn't a great deal of fighting that they were directly involved with, they've still just come back from war. And, it's hard enough being a sprog, being new anyway, let alone when the whole battle group have just come back from Iraq. But there's nothing I could do about that. And what actually helped me was, we had an inter-company boxing tournament when they got back, and because I did a bit of boxing growing up, I did all right in it, and I think that helped sort of make some good friends in the, not just in the company but in the rest of the battalion.
Mm-hmm. And then when was your first chance to get away on operations?
So it would have been it was Northern Ireland for the marching season. So that would have been 2004. I think it was 2004.
So that's like an emergency kind of tour thing, is it? Where you just go, is it like a few months?
Yeah, a few months. So we did all the prep down in Lyd, all your public order training, and then it's only a short deployment. I think we're there for about 4 months for the marching season. So, a different kind of conflict that I wasn't involved with for the rest of my career, because you're deployed to somewhere where the people are relatable. They look like you, they sound like you. The streets look the same as the streets where you've been brought up on. So it was interesting, but there was a couple of quite tasty riots that we were involved in, but other than the riots, there was a lot of downtime as well with training and going to the gym and all that sort of thing.
Did you do any patrolling or anything out there, or was it kind of past that point?
Yeah, we did we did quite a few like atmospheric patrols, and then we would have a presence on all of the major like marches through that summer period. So
how'd that feel the first time you put a magazine on your weapon and went out the gate first time on patrol? It's
a very strange feeling, having live ammo and then leaving the gate knowing that you're joining the reason you joined the military. And we'd heard stories of guys in the battalion that had done multiple tours of Northern Ireland, and there was obviously pockets of severe violence historically, but it was coming to the end of what was the Otbana campaign, so things were quieting down quite a bit. But no, it was a good chance to integrate into the actual platoon, because at this point I'd already been in battalion for well over a year or so, and not really had a chance to do a great deal other than a bit of boxing. So it was a good chance to get to know everyone in the platoon, sort of show them that you're capable as a soldier, that you're you're decent bloke sort of thing. And that was it really, 4 months, and I'm glad that I did it, because it was a good opportunity to get a deployment in early on and sort of embed those soldiering skills and that sort of thing.
So you mentioned blokes who'd done a few operations in Northern Ireland. Obviously you got the blokes coming back from Iraq. Did you have anyone in your battalion thinking, this is 2002, Did you still have anyone in, might have been in the, hold on, was it, no, it was 3 para were in the Falklands, weren't they? So did you have any like CSMs or crusty blokes in the stores who were knocking around who'd been in the Falklands?
Yeah, there was a couple, there was a couple left.
Mega. That must have been mad.
It's insane. So I went to the battalion boxing team, and our head coach was a Lance Jack in the Falklands with 2 para. And he was just, a legend in the battalion. But it's an interesting time because you had guys that had been in battalion years, and, the chances are they've probably done back-to-back tours in Northern Ireland, but that's about it. So when Iraq happened, it was different. It was different for everybody. It was a different landscape. It was a different theatre of operations. So you had guys that had 10-year toms, but there wasn't many that I was aware of that actually fired around in anger, or or had been on the receiving end of a fire. So, and obviously that all changed. That all changed when Herrick started.
So what you went out to Iraq first?
Yes, yeah.
What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was. We went back. We actually supported the Royal Anglians, and this was in 2005. 2005. Yeah, it was 2004 to 5. So we went down. We were in Basra, so Shaibalog base. At this time, I joined the heavy machine guns platoon. So that was quite good. I did a couple of years in a rifle company, and then my boss at the time pretty much said, "Look, whatever carder you want to go for, we'll get you a place on it." And I did always fancy recce platoon, and part of me sometimes thinks it would have been interesting if I'd have gone down that route, but for some reason there was an appeal to me of firing heavy machine guns. And it's like in battalion, the support company are generally more senior guys. It's a little bit more relaxed. Everyone used to have large sideburns, and they're always going out on the piss, and things are just generally a bit more relaxed. So I ended up going to the guns, and then we went in support of a rifle company to Iraq. So it was good. There wasn't a great deal happening at that time where we were in terms of firefights, but there was an increase in attacks on British troops. We would basically patrol around in Wimmicks, just 50 cal on the Wimmick, and we'd spend a couple of days at a time in the desert, patrolling the border regions to Iran and staying out in the desert. So it was quite interesting because it's sort of what I envisaged the role of a paratrooper to be. You're sort of completely self-sustaining. Everything you need everything that you need to operate, you're carrying with you, and there was a degree of autonomy with that as well, because we were left to our own devices whilst we were away. So yeah, it was interesting. And then,
did you take any fire or anything like that on that tour? Was any IDF, anything like that?
Yeah, there was IDF onto the camp. This was actually the first time I was ever shot at. So we were patrolling the Tri border, and there are these small like forts that have been there since forever, either side of the border. And we were visiting one of the Iraqi forts, and on the other side, on the Iranian side, they fired a burst of fire in our general direction. So it wasn't directed at us, but it was close enough.
Especially when you haven't been shot at before.
yeah. So I was on the 50 cal at the time, so we all make ready, and we're sort of prepared to unleash hell, if you like. But the commander told us, he said to stand by, and apparently it was a regular thing that happens, just pot shots across the border. So we didn't want to didn't cause any international friction as part of returning fire. But no, yeah, it was the first time that we came under fire, even though it was only brief, if you like.
So first experience out there, does everyone come home on that tour?
Yes, on that tour, everyone was okay. Yeah. Okay.
So it kind of sounds like it was a bit like, you got you kind of been incrementally increasing in your experiences on Northern Ireland and then Iraq. You're getting a little bit more on each one. You've kind of done the patrolling, got stuck in on the riots, then had the experience of getting out and about a bit more with a little bit of bit more danger, fair to say, in Iraq, and then 2006. Let's talk us through that. When did you first get to know that you were going out to Afghanistan, and what was your kind of feelings about what was coming up? What were you expecting?
So we initially found out the year before. There was rumours going around at the back end of 2005. Mid to the back end of 2005. But I think the majority of us kind of dismissed it as in either, one, it won't happen, or two, it'll be an anticlimax like how we felt Iraq was for us. And at this time I was still only 19, so in my sort of immature, naive mind, I didn't really understand or appreciate more the sort of the global, the geopolitics of us going. I know it was as a result of 9/11, and we knew that Al Qaeda were operating jihadist camps in Afghanistan under the Taliban. But I didn't really fully appreciate the sort of what was going on the ground. So we started hearing rumours of it, and we started to prepare for a deployment. We did a lot of the pre-deployment training in Oman, which was really good, really good. Just it was about 6 weeks. The landscape was very similar to where we would be deploying. Obviously, the weather, and just doing all the pre-deployment stuff that you would do. And then the advance party went out, I think it was around May time. And then that was when it started to really get real. So it just so happened that at this time I'd broken my hand. I broke my hand on a night out in Colchester. So alcohol-fueled night out, and so I broke a bone in my hand, and I was told that my deployment was going to be delayed. So once again, I thought, I'm going to miss out here if I don't act fast. And then what happened is, when A Company went out and they started going on the ground, for the first 4 or 5 weeks, I don't think a great deal was going on kinetically. So one company's gone out alone, have they? The rest of the battalion's still coming in? Yeah, so it was staggered, but an advance party went, and then I'm pretty sure his A Company was the first to go, followed by I think it might have been C next, then B. Don't quote me on that. But what happened after about 5 to 6 weeks is the battalion started getting into some quite cheeky contacts on the ground. So I was still back in Colchester at this point with my hand in a cast. And then it was all over the newspapers. I remember, seeing 3-Para on the front page of like the Sun, and it was just stories of some of the firefights they'd been involved in. So I was desperate to get out on the ground. So I eventually ended up cutting the cast off myself, and managed to get signed off by the medical officer to get out. But I think it really hit home for me when just before I deployed, we took our first fatality as a battalion, and it was a 19-year-old lad called Damien Jackson who was shot and killed on during an ambush. And I think it hit home for me. One, because of how his age. I didn't know him. I knew who he was in battalion, but he was fairly new to battalion. And just before I deployed, I was given the task of packing his bed space away for his family to come and collect. So it was obviously quite a sobering experience going through a young lad's kit. I'm packing it all away into boxes, and I knew that I was going to be deploying in a few days, so I think it really hit home the seriousness of what I was going into.
So, did you have an idea then that it was going before these contacts started happening? Because of course the line that gets fed, or the line that was getting fed by the kind of government and stuff at the time, was that we'd go into Helmand without a shot being fired and stuff, right? And what was it, like 1 million bullets or something? So is that the impressions? Because obviously as a soldier, you could be told you're going to Ibiza and have hopes of massive contacts and everything, because that's what you want to do. You build it up in your head, don't you? But was that actually what you were getting on the briefings of, no, this is going to be a scrap?
Yeah, so I specifically remember the CO, Stu Tootle, amazing commander. I remember us being in the Scoff House, and he was basically saying that Helmand Province is essentially lawless. It was run by warlords and tribal leaders, and it's a very violent place, and there's a good chance that we're going to get into some fights with the enemy. And as you do, it's exactly what we were hoping for at that time. Yeah, although it wasn't until the guys started going out on the ground and getting into some sort of cheeky firefights. So by the time I deployed in, which would have been the early June, I sort of knew what was coming. I knew what to expect just from, I think by this time, a few of the guys had come back on R&R, like the very first sort of rotation. And so we were aware of what was going on the ground, which was brilliant. It's exactly what you want.
Just coming back, suntan, war stories. Like,
yeah.
Did you have that fear of it's going to be all over before I get out there, or did you kind of, would the guys have the impression of this is going to be something else? Because obviously this went on for years, right? So
yeah,
I mean, in different kind of forms, but it was there that impression of like, as far as a soldier goes, we kind of struck gold here.
There was definitely that feeling, yeah, because you had, like I said before, you had people in battalion that were coming to the end of their career and had not fired around in anger. And then all of a sudden you've got 18-year-old lads that had seen more, contacts and firefights in the space of, a few weeks.
Yeah, it's a big luck of a draw when it comes to that kind of thing in people's operational experience and stuff, Through, like you said before, mate, it's through no fault of someone's own. So it's right place, right time, or wrong place, wrong time.
Yes.
So when are you still guns platoon at this point?
Yes.
Okay, so how does that work then with the battalion? Did they split you down between the companies, or were you working, are you going like as an asset between around the battalion, or are they using you together? How were they kind of, how was it Colonel Turtle, how was he kind of using you guys out there?
Yeah, so we were attached to a rifle company as an asset, but we were so stretched on the ground. What often happened, what happened with my machine guns det was there just wasn't people to backfill us and replace us. So I got into theatre. I did your mandatory 3 or 4 days of like your rules of engagement, zeroing your weapons, all that sort of thing. And then I flew straight out to Sangin. And what happened with us was they didn't have anyone to replace us. So we were there for 3 rotations through A company, then C company, then B company.
Right, so talk us through how it works then, mate. So you've got Camp Bastion kind of set up, and then you've got like what? So you've got like a company location in Sangin, and instead of one company holding that for the whole tour, you're rotating companies through.
Yes, yeah. So we held a number of district centres in what were either Taliban strongholds or strategic importance, like Kajaki, for example. And so for Sangin, we were in an old governor's building in the district centre, and we would set up heavy machine guns protecting that compound. And then the general routine would be that the rifle companies would go out and patrol into Sangin every day, every other day, in what was an advanced contact, essentially, because I know, as you'll know, surrounding Sangin, there's an area of like dead ground. It's quite flat, so as soon as you leave the compound gates, there's not really any hard cover until you get into Sangin. So what we would do as a machine guns dep, we would take 2 guys as a machine guns team with a tripod and a jimpy, and we would go on the patrol with them. And then if we weren't doing that, 24/7, we would be rotating through the heavy machine gun positions, defending the district centre.
So what was the idea between rotating companies and moving them to different places rather than leaving someone in an area and being like, right, this is your area for the tour?
Yeah, that's it. It was an interesting question. I don't know whether it was down to they wanted more of a presence in different areas throughout the tour, if they were of more sort of strategic importance, because it obviously isn't an easy thing to do, to rotate a full company out, especially when the area is being attacked on a daily basis. So sometimes, for instance, on one occasion, B Company would fly in for a deliberate operation, and then they'd fly out the same day. And so we had part of the company would be holding the compound, and the remainder would go out and patrol on the ground, or whatever it is, if it was an atmospheric patrol or it was a deliberate op.
So was it in these different district centres, was some of them quiet, some of them noisy, or was it everywhere you went it was going to be kicking off?
I think every district centre had its own unique challenges, from the way that it was built, the landscape, the Taliban presence there. I can only speak through where I went, because I know everyone had their own challenges, but Sangin was particularly challenging for everybody, I think, just because of its location and just holding it off. So we were there for 50 days in total, which is a long time to be constantly under some form of attack. So quite a few of us, we started a contact chart just on an old ration box, and I would just write the date on it, and then if something happened, I would try and get the most accurate information of what we were attacked with, how many people were killed, injured, and how would we return fire. And when I go back over it, out of the 50 days, there was only a couple of days where it's not attacked in some way, shape or form. Now that could be a Chinese rocket, a wombat into the side of the compound, or a near miss followed by small arms fire, or it could be a full-scale, multi-directional attack in an attempt to overrun the compound. So it's a lot. I think it's a lot to digest. So yeah, it's only through looking back, I think bloody hell, I can't even remember some of these, because they all just seem to blur into one. It's only the fact that if it wouldn't have been for the fact that I'd written it down, it would have passed my mind. I mean, the very first day we got there, a friend of mine was shot almost immediately through his femur out on patrol, and that was like day one. A few days earlier, I was only just flown into country, so, and it wasn't the first time that the battalion had been there, so we already knew it was a bit of a hotbed of activity. So I knew that was but that was what I wanted. That was what I wanted at that time. So I considered myself lucky to be given the opportunity to do it.
So I mean, so obviously every day is a bit different, but generally speaking, could you kind of say, right, every morning first light, we get attacked. Last light, we get attacked. Is that pretty much the kind of pattern every day?
Yeah, I mean, there was, it varied. There wasn't so many attacks on the compound at night, I think just because we had the advantage of, night vision capabilities. And it depended on what came from like the ops room, what the task was. But it would be, multiple times a day, sometimes from a little skirmish to like hours, like 3, 4, 5 hours in contact in some way, shape or form. And it changed the MO of the Taliban changed throughout those 50 days as well. Because when we were first there, it was mostly RPGs and small arms, machine guns. But then they started to introduce 105, 107 Chinese rockets. And then they introduced mortar teams and snipers as well. So, the way their tactics changed throughout that period as well.
So first of all, Ben, can you just give us a description about what this governor's house is like? Because some people, if you've watched Yellowstone recently, you might be thinking about Governor Dutton's place and stuff. I'm like, so what is the governor's place like in terms of as a building and what's kind of surrounding it and countryside wise? So
it has a footprint just outside the central bazaar of Sangin, and it draws back onto the Helmand River, and it is essentially a mud compound. So there's a mud compound with 2 floors, and then there's a number of other like annex little compounds. So as fire support, we would share the main building with. There was us. There was the I think we call them now. Like the JTACs, the forward air controllers, and then the mortars were in like behind the building in a separate area, and then surrounding the actual compound was Hesco Bastion that had been put there by the Royal Engineers, with a number of sentry position duties looking out in all the full direct 360 direction of into Sangin.
So you mentioned the Taliban tactics changing. When you first got there, are you because RPGs, that kind of thing, are they getting fired? Are they pretty sneaky about where they're firing from? Are you getting that kind of people walking out into alleyways, standing in the middle of an alleyway firing? Are they up on rooftops? Can you see? Are you getting a quite good view of the enemy, or is it quite hard to kind of figure out where the fire's coming from? Yeah, so it would start from anything from 200 meters up to about 600 meters away. There were firing points where we received a lot of fire from, and that was where most of the air support would be directed at. But there wasn't really any pattern. It depended on what they were doing. But we had an idea where the fire would come from, because there was only so much like hard cover and buildings. And there was evidence of that when we went out on patrols, and you'd see a collection of brass casing or like dried pool of blood from like the day before. So are you laying your guns onto these likely firing points then? Are you basically just ready to go? All you got to do is kind of squeeze the trigger? Yeah, and we do. It was more than an hour. It was about an hour and a half, 2 hour on stag at the gun, and then you'd rotate through, and then you'd have a bit of downtime still on not directly on the flat roof, but in the rooms below it. And we shared the rooms with a contingent of Afghan army soldiers as well. So that came with its own problems and their own challenges, from like sanitation to heroin use. I mean, there was they were trying to steal your heroin.
Yeah. They want to share.
So what was that? What was that like coming across? When you first realised that your partners were off their faces when you were working with them? What was that?
I mean, I know there were some really good Afghan army fighters, as there were Afghan police, but the ones that I experienced with, I didn't trust them. I mean, we had kit going missing on, almost on a daily basis, from like C2 sights, from the mortar to boots, and just like random bits of kit. And they would shoot up in the evenings and throw live rounds into a burn pit. So not only were we getting like incoming fire from the Taliban, just have random rounds like shoot into the room where you like trying to make a brew.
Oh, God, not enough to just get shot at in the day.
But you'll know yourself, but all their equipment as well was just in bits. Like the rifles, the barrels looked almost bent and just like they were falling apart. And they were very eager to sort of take the fight to the Taliban, but I just felt like I always had to keep one eye on them.
Yeah. At this point, was there any worry about them turning their weapons on you, or is it more just these guys are a liability?
Yeah, more of a liability. I know that was the case later, but I think because this was so early on, no one. I mean, I think we suspected it. It was a possibility, but it wasn't really a recognised like threat that it was going to happen. They seemed keen and willing.
So you mentioned actually let's go back to the Taliban. Actually, you're probably obviously putting a lot of rounds down at this point. Is there any? Is it one of those things as you're kind of putting rounds down, but you're putting it down onto buildings and areas rather than people, or were you able to see the people that you were firing at?
Yeah, a mixture of both, really. If it was a multi-directional attack, then there were lots of rounds going on to a general area or a fine position. Or if it was during the early evenings, you'd obviously see the muzzle flashes. But there were occasions where we sort of preempted the attack, and we were able to get rounds down before they started the attack. Actually, the first time that I'd engaged somebody, just myself, I was on the stag, and probably about 250 meters away in a bit of vegetation, I could see the vegetation moving, like swaying. I thought, it's just the wind. So this was like middle of the afternoon as well, so it's scorching hot. And I'm just focusing on the vegetation moving, and then I get the shine, like the reflection of a piece of metal. So I thought that looks odd. So as I'm carrying on to look in, I could see two of them like kneeling with what looked like an RPG, like a long barreled weapon. So at that time, the rules of engagement were you could lawfully engage them, and so that was the first time that I did with a 50 cal, but I couldn't really confirm anything. It was only when a member of the anti-tanks platoon used his thermal imagery sight that he confirmed that he could see one person there, but I wasn't sure whether I'd got both of them or just the first one.
Yeah, and without meaning to be flippant or graphic, if you're firing the 50 cal and you're looking through a thermal sight, there's probably a few different thermal bits laying around the place. Right? I mean, that's...
Yeah.
I've never seen anyone... Well, actually, through thermal sights, yeah. But, there's... Yeah, it's going to make... That's going to... you're going to know if he's lying down and having a nap or if he's being hit by a 50 cal, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And how did that feel?
Do you know what, mate? It was a target. Yeah, there was a few other engagements after that where it played on my mind a little bit, but I felt like I was justified in what I was doing and what I did. But at that time, especially in the moment and during that full time there, I didn't even give it a second thought, which sounds really callous and bad, but I think that is just the mindset that a lot of us had. I had a wife at the time, and my my sort of coping mechanism for being over there was I actually didn't want to speak to her, which I know sounds very selfish, but I would send letters and stuff, but I just felt like it was a distraction. And I've always been very good at sort of sound like a bloody psychopath now, but just like cutting off my emotional attachment to something if I needed to. So it didn't really play in my mind. It was only years later when I started to think back, and I can confidently say that everything I did, I would have done the same thing again, given the same set of circumstances.
Do you think it would have been harder to pull the trigger if you know, let's say you were on one of those quiet tours that you were in, like say your Iraq tour, and you saw the bushes moving in a glint of metal, and you think you see an RPG? You know, is it because you know you're coming under contact every day and stuff? It kind of, you know, it's. You know, to rather than, because I've always thought, like, you know, when you go on a tour, I've always thought that first person there's always the first person in the battalion who has to pull the trigger, isn't there? And I've always thought, like, that's something, that, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think you are certainly desensitized to it to a point, because at that point, I forget the rules of engagement card that it was
49 Alphas.
Yes, 49. So there was warning shots going off all the time, you know, and let alone the actual engagements. So I think that it wasn't out of the ordinary. So I think that definitely made a difference. If it was all quiet and it's an exception, you've not had anything else during that tour, and I think for the distance and the fact that I couldn't fully like make out, you know, exactly like the figures and stuff. The distance definitely has a disconnection. It's not like it's up close and you know, personal.
Did you ever come across Taliban bodies, or would they be kind of cleared up in the night?
Yeah, they generally. What we noticed was that towards the end of those 50 days. Prior to that, they would generally take their dead and wounded with them, and we would see, like I say, we'd see evidence of fighters there from the brass casings or whatever it may be. But towards the end, a few of them had been left, and what we were told, I don't know how accurate this was that a lot of foreign fighters that had came across. So I know that a lot of the mortar teams were foreign fighters, and that I'd heard that if they were foreign fighters, they wasn't as such of an urgency to recover their dead. But up until the latter end of those 50 days, they would generally, you know, take them away if they could. So
what about your own expectations of death and wounds? Like, did you go out there expecting to come back in one piece?
I think initially, especially during Sangin, I was so keen to, you know, this was everything I joined the military to do, and it was offered to me on a plate. You know, I was so keen to have an impact. So it completely met my expectations and more. But I think naively, to begin with, I didn't really realise how much danger, you know, I was in. There were so many like close calls where you think, in my older mind now, I think, bloody hell, you know, a couple of inches. Or, for instance, there was an example where there was a time where a friend and I were in a Sanger position, and a mortar bomb hit the sandbag 2 feet from our face. It literally hit the sand. We were standing to. Hit the sandbag, we heard the thud, and we both looked through the window, and it was smoking on the floor. It was a dud round. You know, for whatever reason, the gods that be, it just were meant to be that day. There's a few occasions like that, but then we kept being told that we were going to be relieved. So I had 2 shirts with me, and that was it. So there was an occasion where a friend of mine was shot through his neck, and I was involved with getting him off a flat compound roof. This was out on the ground on a patrol, and by the end, my hands and my fingernails and my sleeves are saturated in his blood, and this only played on my mind years later. And because I didn't have any clean clothes, days later, I'm still like looking at the stains in my sleeves as, like a bit of a horrible reminder, really, even after trying to scrub them clean in the river. So, and then because we were told we were going to be relieved on so many occasions only to be let down, I generally resided in the fact that I'm meant to be killed here. I genuinely believed it. I thought there's no way I'm going to get out of here. So, it's a weird, and it happened to me later on in life as well. I kind of just accepted it, and I think a certain amount of like calmness comes with that. I don't know. The mind is fascinating in the ways it the things that it comes up with to try and protect yourself. And I think trying to forget about a lot of the contacts is probably one of those defense mechanisms.
Did your friend pull through?
Yeah. This was another thing that really played in my mind. So it was a shit situation to be in. We were ambushed out on the ground, and he put his head above a half wall to try and identify a firing position, and a single 7.62 round passed through his neck. So there was me and another guy, and we were in a situation where we were receiving fire, but because of the nature of the injury, we didn't really want to move him, but we had to move him because we were getting ambushed. So yeah, we got him back down. He was evacuated on the quad bike that came in to evacuate him. The quad bike was hit by an RPG that bounced off the quad bike. It rolled the quad bike.
Jesus.
I'm sure it was the Sergeant Major. It was a senior NCO that was on the quad. Got back up, carried on, managed to it was a surreal experience. So, but yeah, he survived, but was paralyzed from the neck down. So yeah, I write about it in detail in the book, and it's one of those things you often think, is there anything I could have done different? But I don't think there is. It was a bad decision. Whatever we did, it wasn't going to be a good outcome, really.
Yeah, I mean, what was it? Was that the first casualty you dealt with?
No. There was quite a few. Anything from a good friend of mine had his index finger shot off in front of my face. Just a random burst of fire that hit the face of the wall, and the rounds came in. The round passed the front of my face and took his finger off. I actually thought he'd burnt his finger on the barrel.
Okay, so you smell it
of the weapon, yeah, and because it was going dark as well, so I just looked to my left and I could see him shaking his hand.
Oh, right.
So I thought, he's burnt his hand, and then when I looked at it and I seen his finger was missing, the first thing I said was, "Don't look at your hand." Don't look. And then as soon as he made eye contact with it, he went into sort of like a state of shock.
Yeah.
But because it was so hot at that time, they couldn't CASEVAC him until days later. So literally the next night.
So hot as in enemy contact?
Yeah, they wouldn't, like we ran out of food at one point. It was insane, mate. It was just like we had a bad batch of ammo, so we got to the point where we were literally down to our last few boxes of ammo.
Right now.
And we were using Estonian ammo. But we had a bad batch of ammo on the 50 cal where there was a stoppage after every 2 rounds, which is obviously not ideal in a firefight.
Defeats the object of a machine gun release, isn't it?
Yeah. So we were relying on Terps going into the bazaar and buying us Zam Zam. It's like a shit Afghan Fanta, but it just melts your teeth with the amount of syrup in it, and hummus, like flatbread.
So just get it straight then. So the Terps would go on their own into the marketplace to buy stuff. Were the Taliban, do you reckon, aware of this? Or do you reckon they would have strung them up or whatever if they did?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's a hell of a risk.
Yeah, it was... it was either Terp or someone from the Afghan army, and they would get a load of food, and we would get some. And I think, don't quote me on this, it might have been Nowzad, where Terp went out and the Taliban found out that he was working for coalition forces, and they did exactly that. They executed him. But it was insane. I remember because I was smoking so heavily just to stop the hunger and because of the sandflies. But I remember just having biscuit browns with chocolate spread on, and that was your meal for the day. It was tough. I mean, the guy that had his finger shot off, he was literally there the next day just with a bandage around his finger, engaging the enemy.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what you want. That's what you want your airborne blokes to do, though, right?
Yes.
It's proper Arnhem stuff. So, how crucial was air power, air support for you?
I think if it wouldn't have been for the air power, I think we would have been overrun.
And is that what they were actively trying to do, you think? They were actively trying to overrun the DC? If they could, I'm not saying that they were coming in, human wave charges, but if you were getting that low on ammo, do you reckon that's what the move would have been?
I think if they would have known how low we were on ammunition at that point, definitely was a possibility. A lot of the contacts were... They were just and you're in a defensive position, so it's a strange situation to be in because you're not out on patrol or assaulting a compound. You're static, so you're at the mercy of the enemy, aren't you? Because their mortars, once they're zeroed in, there's not much you can do. It's just down to pure luck. There's no like soldiering skill involved. It's just pure luck if that bomb lands on your head. But there were a couple of occasions where they got quite close, and we got quite close to them on the ground. There was 2 occasions on patrols where we actually fixed bayonets, and that is a surreal thing to do. Is you do your bayonet training, but you don't think you actually can do it on the ground. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, and never had to use it, but we were close enough to them.
So with the air power then, how would it work? Are you waiting to a certain point when things look like like you're kind of, if the Taliban's getting the upper hand, that's when you call it in? Or was it like as soon as you get a contact, like, right, let's fucking smash it? Like, how did that go? Yeah,
any significant firefight, we had a member of JTAC attached to us on the roof, and anything that was significant, he'd be straight on the radio requesting air, and most of the time that was available, and it was pretty good. Like I say, I do think that without the support of the air cover, it would have been a different outcome.
I mean, what did you think then at the time? So we can talk about in hindsight as well, but at the time, what did you think about this idea of spreading the battalion out, in different places, while it's, like you said, very hard to get people in and out, hard to resupply, everything like that? What did you, as you're sitting around on the rooftops, middle of the day, covered in sandflies, sun beating down, bit of shinfing going on, like what was it kind of like? Because I mean, it must be weird, because in one part there must be part of you that's like, oh, fucking loving this our own little rogue street. Yeah. But on the other hand, there must have been that part of you as a soldier that's like, this is fucking daft, like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, I think we sort of lean towards the latter towards the end of the 50 days. Initially, we're getting shots at and we're laughing and we're like buzzing. This is what we joined to do, sort of thing. And then I think the changing point for me was seeing A company leave, Sangin, the C company came in, and we had that as a guns debt. I think we had a feeling of we should be going on that flight now. Like we're physically, emotionally, we're fatigued. So I think that was a changing point, and then it was just a case of taking it day by day, really.
Yeah. But like with this thing of like holding these DCs, did it seem to make sense to you, or did you seem to think there's got to be a better way of kind of skinning this cat?
Yeah, there was a feeling of, there was definitely a feeling of, and again, you know, as a sort of boots on the ground, I think I was probably in danger of not being aware of like the overall like strategy, what we were trying to achieve in that area at that time. But there was definitely a feeling of we're too thin on the ground. I know that was certainly the case with the guys that were in Musa Qala, you know, the siege of Musa Qala. Like it just felt like we were thin. Like we shouldn't be running out of ammo, and we should have enough guys to rotate us in when we're sort of battle fatigued, if you like. Because like I said, every time we left the compound gates, it was no longer a patrol, it was an advance to contact. So, but yeah, the powers that be at that time, I don't know what the rationale was for, the importance of holding these district centres and stretching ourselves so thin.
Because it sounds like from every, obviously I know Adam and Hughie, and from the book with Adam, and it sounds like if you're trying to win over the local population and you're putting people in district centres where the only way you can not get overrun is to level the district centre with bombs and gun runs and everything. It's, because like you said, it's the same that I heard from the Easy Company up in Musa Qala. If we didn't have the air power, we'd have got overrun. And you're like, well, good that we got the air power, because I'd obviously rather the British company not get overrun. And the other thing I think people should know is I think a lot of the people had evacuated by this point, hadn't they? Like they pulled out. But you're still destroying someone's kind of homes and moving them out of their homes. And I just don't see how that strategy was, I get where it kind of came from, it's you want to cover as much of an area as possible. But, it seems that maybe it was a bit of a kind of sunk cost at that point.
Yeah. Like I say, at what cost? And most of the civilian population have left, so you can pretty much guarantee that they're Taliban or affiliated to Taliban, all the way from hardened Taliban to your sort of 10-bob Taliban.
Yeah. So how did that change you, that tour, as a person?
Mate, it changed my life for forever. I mean, so I came back from Sangin. I had a day in Bastion. I felt like I didn't feel myself. I just felt like I was in this fixed trance. it was like my mind was just trying to digest all of these, this like a sensory overload almost. And then the following day I went to Kajaki. We were only there for about 3 weeks, and it was a completely different experience. There was pockets of IDF, but it was pretty much a holiday compared to what we'd just been to, and like I say, it was coming to the end of our tour. But I came back, and what happened with me is a whole host of things happened all at once, and it just tipped me over the edge. So, like my wife at the time she gave birth like 2 weeks after I got back, so that was a lot to take in, and then randomly I got diagnosed with skin cancer, and while I was being investigated for the skin cancer, so I had like an emergency surgery. They put it down to my time in Saudi as a kid, and because I've got the ginger gene, I just
impressed that in me.
As much as I love being in the sun, I've got weak skin. And whilst I was being investigated for that, or I had surgery, I then started urinating blood. So I'd just turned 21. In my mind, I thought, going back to Sangin, I thought, well, I was supposed to die there. And I convinced myself that, I mean, it's such a strange way of thinking, but that I was gonna die in some painful chronic disease instead. So I was being investigated for cancer, and then I started urinating blood, and automatically I thought, well, the cancer's spread to my organs, and that's what that is. Turns out it's something completely separate. It was an incurable kidney disease. So I had all the physical things that were happening to me. And then psychologically, I just was in a really like bad place. Like I was emotionally numb. Like I just didn't feel anything. And I've read a bit more about this, and I know it is a common symptom of PTSD and mental health. But because I was so desensitized to everything that happened over there, I just couldn't. I didn't laugh, cry. I didn't feel anger. And I sort of come to accept that I was going to die. So what I did was really perverted and bizarre. But I would order and watch execution videos in the night. So I couldn't sleep because I'd have like horrendous nightmares, and I didn't want to be awake. So I was just getting lashed up every day. And then
by that, just for Americans listening, it means drunk.
Yeah. Yeah. And
we've got an international audience here, mate. So
so I was just drinking, and then when my missus would go to bed at night, I would literally just sit in the dark. And I ordered these videos off the internet, like they were in VHS form, and they were home filmed. Horrendous videos, like, people being set on fire and beheaded, horrendous things, stonings.
All like terrorism. Those Faces of Death videos, are they? Those like
yeah, similar to that sort of thing. Yeah. And my intention was to watch that. I wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't like dead inside.
Fucking hell.
Do you know what I mean? I was like, I must feel some empathy here, but it was just like So
I mean, it's probably, if anything, putting what psychologists are, pushing you even further down the other way, because then to accept what you're watching, you have to build that wall even more, don't you?
Yeah.
To realise that person, it's horrible, mate. But you know what, mate? I've heard that off quite a few people when I think, I'm sure you're probably I'm sure you see something like that now, you're probably like, oh, it's fucking terrible. And
I can't watch it.
Yeah. But in that phase of your life, you've built up that wall between empathy for yourself, for other people.
Yeah.
Mate, I got to ask you as well, like, you didn't think you were going to come back from Sangin, and I didn't realise you were expecting a child as well. So what was that like? That must have been mad, just thinking I'm never going to see my son.
Yeah,
well, you didn't know it was a son at the time.
No.
Or your child. You're never going to see your child.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I tried to just block it out, just like almost in a selfish way for, like self-preservation. I just thought if I start letting my mind wander when I was there, then it's not going to do me any good tactically, as in, being switched onto my environment, but also psychologically. So, but yeah, I think, like I say, I'm very good at sort of like, if I have to cut something out, I can just cut it out emotionally. It's probably not a healthy attribute, but
good for soldiering, mate. So how did that affect it when you did have your child? Were you able to like feel anything at that point, or were you still kind of numb to just any emotion?
Yeah, I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel anything. It was just, I started having like suicidal thoughts. I just thought I couldn't see a way out, and I think like not sleeping obviously really doesn't help. And then you add alcohol to that and everything that was going on medically. I just couldn't see a future. So it was a really difficult time. And then it all came to a head one evening with. So I was with my wife at the time. My son had been born, and we had friends around the house. It was actually my sister-in-law, and basically we were just my sister-in-law and I were play fighting in the kitchen, and we were all in the kitchen. We were all drinking, and we were like shadow boxing, and she was like jabbing me, and we were just laughing and joking. And then she like threw a hook, and it caught me in the corner of my eye, and it it stung like you can imagine. And it was a really strange thing happening because it was the first time that I'd like felt something in a long time, and it was pain. And then that was like the catalyst to, I just had like this surge of emotions come up, and I just started like crying uncontrollably. And then like literally with my hands, like clenched fists, I just started like hitting myself as hard as I could. I was literally like battering myself, and I like bloodied my nose, my lip was burst. And then my brother-in-law jumped up from the other end of the kitchen, and he ran across the kitchen and he like rugby tackled me to stop me from like hitting myself. And we fell to the side of the kitchen top. And as I fell, I looked up, and I was drunk as well. I looked up, and the bloody block of knives were right in front of me. So I've leant across, I've picked up the biggest kitchen knife, and I just start like cutting my wrists.
Fucking hell, mate.
Yeah, it was like a scene of a bloody horror film. So I'm stood in the kitchen, just like crying uncontrollably and hurting myself, and then I throw the knife away. And they're like all crying and traumatized. And my wife says, we'll get you the help that you need. And I just said, you can't help me. You can't help me. But I'm very lucky in a way that I was still serving at that time. So she should have called the police really, but she called the guard room, and a good friend of mine was the guard commander. He come and stagged on me all night, and then she left, understandably. And then basically I got to speak to a psychologist in the army, and that lasted for nearly a year. And it was the best thing really that could have happened. And, I wouldn't say that it fixed everything, but it definitely helped. And it led to me getting discharged out of the military, basically.
When did you kind of, well, two things. One, when did you kind of like that thing you had of not being able to sleep, watching the videos of people drinking. When did that kind of stop for you? And when was it that you started to feel like more like access to your emotions again? And were those two kind of things correlated?
Yeah, I think it took a lot of time. It took probably nearly a year. And when I was seeing the psychologist, this was where the foundation of my book came from, because he said to me, I want you to write down in chronological order everything you can remember from that tour. And he said, don't worry about the quality of the writing, the spelling, just write. Because I couldn't remember a lot of things. And that's what I did. I probably wrote about 10,000 words, and it was awful, but it was just to try and process it in my mind. So that helped a lot. There was a lot of abandonment issues from childhood that I was trying to come to terms with as well. And then it was decided the best thing would be for me to leave the military. So I think that changed a lot for me as well. I'd already had nearly a year of seeing this psychologist like 3 or 4 times a week. They give me medication to help me sleep. And it was a slow process, but it was definitely the right thing for me to leave and do something else. And like so many infantry units, it was either go down the physical training route or close protection.
Well, we can't help being so massively essence with big arms, can we, mate? We didn't choose that life.
Exactly.
So one thing I want to ask as well, actually, I want to say something about those videos, because it used to be on Instagram and stuff. It wasn't that kind of thing. But these days, you only got to open your feed and you see some poor fucker getting blown apart by a drone or whatever. I've said this to people before, but like, because I know there's young people listening, and we did the same. I don't know, it seems to be something that young blokes do. What would you say to people that kind of find themselves getting drawn into watching that kind of thing?
Personally, I think no good. It's a balance, because we can't shield ourselves from what's going on around the world. And we're so fortunate that we live, for all of its, for all of the areas that it could be improved. We live in very fortunate to live in where we live. And people with our sort of background have witnessed the absolute worst of humanity. And I feel that no good can come from it. It's, I won't even, if someone sends me a video now, I won't even watch it. So the, digital media and the internet is an incredible thing, but there has to be balance. You have to control what you're feeding yourself with. So, it wouldn't be something that I would, advocate for.
Yeah, I totally agree, mate. I just put it like, imagine if that was your mate that people are watching and laughing about and putting comments about, and you're like, just some people are going to watch it, usually keyboard warriors who never put themselves in those positions themselves, but I just think try not to be a part of it. And, if I was your parents having to watch you get hit by a fucking little kamikaze drone or something, it's just, I think it's something you like I said, if I was speaking to my young self now, I don't know, I was never perfectly comfortable watching those things, to be honest, mate. I think there's such a kind of, sanctity with life and everything that, and I mean, I'll be honest as well. It's like you could watch someone from ISIS get blown apart all day and it doesn't seem to affect you. There's definitely that us and them thing going on in there as well. But yeah, I just think you young, not lads, just young people now, or even older, watching that stuff, it's just, just imagine if it was your mate, really, and just try and give that person a bit of dignity. Because you don't know anything about that person. They might have been a really good bloke who ended up in a really bad situation. Could have been a total, trying to get my language better on this. Could have been a total C word, but you just don't know. So give them the benefit of the doubt.
Also, there's so many other funnier things to watch like
yeah, there's big bums, boobies like this, there's all kinds of things, cat videos,
the best.
We are cat, get a bit of that on me. So mate, so like with your life now, like that was your old routine, getting lashed up, watching these videos. What have you kind of done now to kind of, like, I imagine you probably built yourself a bit of a framework that you operate around to kind of keep yourself on the tracks?
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking to you now, I'm by no means perfect, and I have bad days. I feel like as I've got older, I'm nearly 40 now. I know myself better. I know if I'm having a bad day. Like if I have a couple of days, I still drink now, but I still have that in me to sort of not have an off button, and once you start, it's a fine balance. But like, I know for me, if I get up, I go to the gym, cold shower, get a decent scoff for me, I'm setting myself up for a good to do something productive. So but yeah, so I think one is I know myself better. I know if I need to change what I'm doing, but I don't get it right all the time. I do my best like everybody else, but I certainly don't have a problem like I did all those years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I know I just said that people shouldn't watch those kind of death videos, but I'd probably rather do that than have a cold shower, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got to draw the line somewhere, mate. But that's awesome. Now you're in the fire service, huh?
Yes.
Well, what's that been like, being back in the... Well, I mean, you've never really left the teams, obviously they did the close protection work and everything, but must be good being in that team environment, good sense of purpose. Yeah,
do you know what, mate? I think there are so many transferable skills for veterans in, the public sector, in some kind of service. It does feel like just being in a section again. Yes, it's different. It's a different uniform. It's a different job, but I feel like it challenges me. I'm constantly learning new stuff. And there's a lot of similarities to being in the military. So I absolutely love it. And I'm fortunate enough that it gives me enough downtime to pursue other things, whether it be writing or whatever that is, cold showers.
Mad, mate, mad. Never going to convince you on that one, mate. So when you kind of look back on it, the kind of, you know, certain things are outside your control in life, certain things are. And obviously one of the big things that was in your control was joining the military or not joining the military, and especially joining the Parachute Regiment, you know. When you look back on it, would you change anything?
I don't think I would. I don't think I would. I feel like the person that I am, I've developed an immense amount of empathy for other people, and I definitely wouldn't be that person if I'd not gone through some experiences that I had. Like in 2017, I was lying on what should have been my deathbed after suffering complete renal failure, and I didn't think that, you know, I didn't think that I was gonna, that was the end of my life then. So since then, I just think that there's nothing I can complain about. You know, I wouldn't change anything. But it's a bit of a dichotomy, because I wouldn't change anything, but also I wouldn't want it for my son.
Right.
But I mean, you know, what father would?
Yeah, and shout out to your sister as well, man. Like, she's gleaming by the sounds of her.
Yeah, well, now she's saved my life. Technically, I can go in any toilet, male or female, because I've got a female organ.
Not in America anymore, mate, but let's keep... sorry, I'm going to keep the politics out of this. Actually, let me just ask this, because you said something about how it helped you writing things down when you had, you know, you're going through treatment. Obviously, you expanded a lot on that for the book. How was that for you? Did that have any help? Or not any help, sorry. Did that have any positive effect at that point, or did you kind of got past that, or was that more, you know, with every extra 1,000 words, was it more kind of healing process?
Yeah, I mean, coming from, because I didn't even finish school, so I'm not academic in any sense of the word. So it was challenging. The parts that I had to go back to, the scenes that I had to describe were horrendous. Like, I had weeks of, you know, I felt like I was reliving it again, but it felt like closure finishing it at the end of it. And it was the therapeutic powers of writing will have been lost on me. So I think that, you know, I wasn't aware of them, so I will definitely continue to write. I'd love to do another book, and just like continue writing. I think like it's a big thing for veterans. More veterans should be reading and writing more, because it helps, you know, helps hugely.
Don't say too much, mate. We don't want stealing our sales.
Yeah.
Anything but like about your service, about your war stories, or just any golden nuggets of information? I was going to say, like, obviously we haven't covered all your story, but the great thing is, and I'll let people know where they can get it at the end when I do the outro, is, you know, there's the book to go and get a lot more of this story. But is there anything just for this podcast that you'd like to kind of drop on people before we finish?
I know it sounds a bit cliche, but what I found as I got older in life, I'm trying to enjoy sort of the now more, because I'm so guilty of trying to spin so many plates at once, and I'm constantly thinking of the next thing and the next thing. I'm by no means a victim, and I'm so grateful for like all the opportunities that I've had. So yeah, now I'm just in a position where I'm trying to be a voice for like veterans that are suffering with mental health. I'm a big believer in like veterans helping other veterans. There's a whole community of us out there that we're all trying to get by in life, and we've all got our own problems and overcome our own adversities. So yeah, that's it really. That's probably about it.
Mate, thanks so much for giving your time today. Thanks for coming down here. It's nice to do this in person. This has absolutely flown by, mate. I can't believe how fast this has gone, but really appreciate you making the trip, bro. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers, guys.
All right, so just want to thank Andy again for giving his time today. Really do appreciate it, and I want to thank you for listening. It means a lot if you stick with all the podcast. You know, I appreciate you listening, appreciate you caring. And on that note, as I kind of said at the beginning, if we could just kind of have this little gentleman's agreement between us that if you enjoy the podcast, if you get something from it, then you share it. Every episode you enjoy, you share it. If you thought the stories were worth listening to, then somebody else will do too. So please share on social media, tell someone about it, you know, in a conversation. people still have them. Text it to people. Just let people know about it. I really do appreciate it. Connect to the Bluetooth in your gym and blast it out. And if you could leave reviews, they help too. Now, the other thing I want to say is if you have a war story yourself, if you served on operations, wherever that might be, whoever that might have been for, please get in touch. Our details are down in the show notes. We're also on social media at War Story Podcast. The Veteran State of Mind account is still up, still going as well, and will be continuing to go. I haven't decided what I use that for yet. Probably just posting memes. And get in touch. We'd love to have a chat and talk about getting you on the podcast. Just let us know when you do get in touch. Just give us a brief introduction into what your service was, where you were, and everything like that. And we'll start to build up the guest list. And the idea is to get these coming thick and fast. So thanks very much for tuning in, guys. And I'll say thank you ahead of time for the share, which I know you're going to do right now. And we'll catch you very, very soon. We'll be back in about 7 or 8 days.